discovered the origins of money, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, these ancient priests that suddenly appeared on earth, which are the evidence of the first royal bloodlines on earth, that suddenly owned all the land. They became the first kings to own the land, and suddenly the people were their slaves, and they had to bring them things and offerings to their temples. They started to create these little clay tablets. This is 4000 BC, but I suspect it's even way before that. We can't really guess how far back this goes, but we speculate. But 4000 BC, some of these clay tablets, these tiny little clay tablets, if you look in my Ubuntu book, I'll show pictures of it. And then the Sumerian tablets tell us that these priest kings built their temples, and the temples are connected to where the laws were made and justice was dispensed from, and they were the banks, because from these temples, so it's all under one roof. Control, kingdom, justice, courts, money, banking, all from one place. And nothing has changed, right? But they started to issue these little clay tablets that had they would tell the people to bring in their silver and their gold and into the temple. And in return, they would give them a clay tablet. They would say, John Smith brought me 7 pieces of silver and 1 piece of gold, and give them the clay tablet. And they would keep the silver and gold. It's like, what a great exchange. And that's what they did, 4000 BC already. And then I went, oh my God, this is the origins of modern banking. These are promissory notes. These are negotiable instruments. These are the bills of exchange. And the Rothschilds just took that and they perfected it with their central banks. And I went, we're screwed. This is it. We can't get out of this. If there's a central bank in a country, you're screwed. You can't beat them. They operate outside of the legal system. Look how much trouble Trump has got with the Fed at the moment. He's trying to manipulate the Fed and they're not budging because they don't have to. But he's got the guns. So they might have to. Unfortunately, if you know. But anyway, we know that they control everything. So that's when I started to realize we're screwed. So how do we do this? And I'd really encourage you to do this for yourself, just to get to see how your brain reacts to it and how you compute this. Just imagine this, because I tell you what I did, and this is what led me down the One Small Town path. Literally, 2005. So it's 20 years ago. I said to myself, what if I woke up tomorrow morning and money didn't exist? There was no money, nothing. There was no concept of money. I went to the shop to buy stuff. Money didn't exist. There was stuff available, but there was no money to exchange. What would we do? How would we get stuff? How would we bake bread? How would we grow food? How would we exchange? And I started to think about the world without money. And at first, it is an unimaginable problem that you can't solve. And then I'll never forget how after about a week, I solved the first riddle. It was like literally I created my own riddles for myself, right? So how do we solve this problem? And it took me about a week to solve the first riddle. I was so excited. I'll never, ever forget. I was so excited. I phoned up all my friends and started telling them about, wow, you know what happened? If we did this and we took money out when we did this, we'll solve this problem. And I was like a child in a freaking toy shop. I was so excited because I solved the first riddle of world without money. And then I thought, okay, well, how are we going to solve this problem? Whatever problem, I can't even remember what it was that I was trying to solve. How are we going to do X, And then when I solved that, I went, oh my God. Okay, so how are we going to solve the next problem? And literally, the solutions came quicker and quicker and quicker. Literally, so the first one took about a week, the next one took about 3 days, the next one took a day, and after that it just became like a few hours and it would solve the problem. And I went, oh my God, we don't need money. We can live in a world without money. And no matter how do you go and tell people about this? It's like they think you're crazy, and they did. And I started to hold meetings. Started gathering and say, hey, we can create a world without money. I was like a child trying to tell people things that they didn't want to hear. One of the best meetings I heard about this was organized by a senior banker, senior member of Absa Bank. It's the biggest bank in South Africa. And she just loved my Slave Species book. I just released it. And she said, you know what? And because I've been talking about a world without money and contributionism. It's when I came up with the word contributionism, and we contribute towards the well-being of our community. That's the real value. We don't need money. I don't want anybody to give me money. I just want to contribute, and then if you contribute and we all contribute, we don't need money. But how do you get this to people? So she said, I'm hosting a dinner for about 12 people at my house in Northcliffe. It's like the Beverly Hills of Johannesburg. So why don't you come and tell the guests about your idea about a world without money? Then I walk into a trap. It was literally like I walked into a freaking slaughterhouse. And all these people are from the financial industry. So tell us about this idea of yours where we don't need money. Boy, I got beaten up really badly because I hadn't thought it through. I wasn't ready for it. But that was baptism by fire and just made me go away and say, I know I have solutions for those, but I wasn't ready for those questions. So I went away, and within a week I had answers to all the questions that they raised. And then I thought, okay, I better start doing something about this. And that's when I started talking about how do we get from here to there. And I started to post videos, and it just started to grow. And the more I started to talk about ancient civilizations, the more people wanted to know about a world without money. And I'll never forget, after my first trip to America in 2010, and I did 26 cities, tour of 26 cities. It was insane. I used to end my presentations with about 45 minutes about one small town, or Ubuntu in those days, and then I would end with, it all begins with one small town. And that's how we got to the One Small Town initiative. And I found that at the end of my lecture of ancient civilizations, the technology, everything, all the people wanted to know and talk about was one small town. And how do we get out of this mess? So I was faced with a dilemma. I said, so what do I do? Do I continue researching ancient civilizations, or do I put my focus on the One Small Town initiative? And it was very obvious. It's got to be one small town. Because if we don't have a future, then what's the point? We've got to learn from the ancient past and from our experiences of the past and make it work for us today. So everything I've learned from our ancient civilizations, put it into use. No.
You're making our ancestral knowledge again, aren't you?
It's we know the stuff, we just don't know how to get from here to there. And it's just slowly but surely started to grow, and look where we are today. We got 2 amazing ambassadors in England. We have amazing ambassadors in the UK, in the USA. Just unfortunately, our ambassador, they just had to resign because of health issues, but did incredible foundation laying for us that will allow us to launch incredibly successfully in the USA. We're going to launch successfully here in the UK and in England, and because of the work that we're doing now with Julia and Michael and more people that are joining the team here in the UK. And we're open. If you want to join our team in the UK to make One Small Town a success, the door's open. At the moment, it's all volunteers because there's no money to pay people. But very soon there will be money. So where we are with One Small Town right now is we've learned a tremendous amount, unimaginable amount over the last 15, 17 years. And especially the last 4 years have been the fastest growth, unbelievable growth of knowledge, experience, and realizing mostly what not to do, what doesn't work. And that's by far the best lessons we've learned. How not to work with government, because government will not support you. How you can't work with municipalities or mayors or councillors. They will destroy your plans because they don't have a vested interest in you succeeding with this, unless there's a personal vested interest for them. We cannot work in politics because politics is inherently a system of opposition. The moment you enter politics and you support a specific party, you oppose all the other parties. So you become an opposition to everybody else. And again, we did this. I started the Ubuntu Party. I ran in 3 elections in South Africa. We ran in 1 election here in the UK in 2 counties in 2015 with the Ubuntu Party. You may not even be aware of that. So we had 2 candidates. Stoke, that's right. Stoke-on-Trent, and I forget the other one, yeah. And We ran in New South Wales. A young chap ran as he ran for governor of New South Wales under the Ubuntu banner. We almost launched in the USA, almost ran in the USA as a political party, and we registered the Ubuntu party in Canada. And then some crap happened, and the guys started to argue and fight, and they dissolved the Ubuntu party in Canada, which was a blessing in disguise, because after the 2016 election in South Africa, so we ran in 2012 and 2014. I ran for president in South Africa. If you don't know that, you're looking at the future presidential candidate. At the past presidential candidate in South Africa. The funny thing is, we went into those elections in 2014, the national elections, with the Ubuntu party with 1 million signed-up members. A little party like that. We had 1 million signed-up members. Most of them were below the age of 30. Just think about that. We appealed to the youth with a vision. That vision hasn't changed. The One Small Town vision and the Ubuntu party vision is exactly the same. Nothing has changed. So we went with 1 million members. So I thought, wow, that's going to be interesting. We should get 100,000 votes. If 10% of our members vote, we should get 100,000 votes. They will give us 2 seats in Parliament, maybe 3. So, wow. Well, we didn't get 3 seats in Parliament. We didn't even get close to 100,000 votes. We ended up with 5,500 votes. But that's when I realized how crooked the whole political system is. And I'll quickly tell you the story. And so the reason I'm telling you this is because I walk the talk of politics. So if anybody talks politics to me, I can talk to you from experience, because I've been there, done it. Not just in South Africa, New Zealand, UK, Australia, USA. So it's not just localized experience in politics, it's global experience in politics. And it's just a disgusting cesspool of crookedness. It's horrible. So we were all, at the elections, in these huge halls, and this big blue screen on the one side, and all the election results come up there, and every party has got their own table, and you all come with your delegates and members with your suits or T-shirts or whatever, and you sit around your table, and you walk around and bump into all the other political parties. So it's an interesting melting pot where everybody mingles, including the ANC and the DA and the big parties. And you see the arrogance and the egos and all that kind of stuff. And at one stage, the African Christian Democratic Party, their table was sort of just in front of us. And at one stage, one of the ladies, the black woman, leaned back very well dressed, with the hat and the hair, and like really looking like $1 million. And she leaned back on a chair like this. And she looked at me and she shouted, "Hey, Ubuntu." And I went, "Yeah." And she said, "Did you know that you got the most number of votes in the foreign vote count?" I went, "Say that again?" She said, "Ubuntu, you got the most number of votes in the foreign vote count. In other words, people voting outside of South Africa." And I went, "Are you sure about that?" She says, "Yeah. I was one of the observers, or whatever you call them, when they do the count." And she says, "Everybody was very surprised." And I went, "So am I." But by then, I'd been doing a lot of tours around the world, UK, all over the place, USA, Canada, and there are a lot of South Africans living in all these places. So they obviously loved the message, so they must have voted for the Ubuntu party. So I thought, that's going to be interesting. How is the media going to deal with that? Unknown Ubuntu party wins the foreign vote count. Forget about it. It's not going to wash. It's not going to happen. They're not going to allow that to happen. There were 28,000 votes cast outside of South Africa. So I thought, out of 28,000 votes, we got the majority. That means we should get at least 10,000 out of the 28,000 votes, with all the other parties getting the rest. So now I'm waiting for 10,000 votes, maybe more. So now we wait. Normally they release that on the same day. We wait 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, still no release of the foreign vote count results. Now I'm going, I know why that is happening. I'm starting to go, I know exactly why it's taking so long. They're trying to figure out how they're going to present the results, how they're going to, fudge the numbers. Eventually, on the final day of the elections, the phone vote count is put out. Guess how many votes the Ubuntu Party got? Out of 28,000 votes, we got 28. 28 votes they gave us. So I went to this woman. I said, what is this? She says, I don't know. I said, are you sure we got all those votes? She said, yes. So I went, okay, I understand what's going on here. Yeah, that's it, in your face. So, and that was the last time, that's when we exited politics, because I realized you just can't do it. So the One Small Town Initiative is a non-political movement. Everyone is welcome.